All right, well, thank you for joining us for the Victory Vision podcast, and hope you've had a good year up to this point. We're getting ready for the new year, and pray that God will bless you in this new year that's coming up. I want to kind of go over something today we think would be a help to you, and I just preached on it last night at our church, and I kind of wanted to just do more of a condensed look at it today on the idea of manipulation. I've heard a lot about it. Lately, people have talked about this, about manipulation. I've heard it and read articles about it, specifically when it comes to counseling and people that are like maybe against God and against church. What they've said is that church is about manipulation and preachers are manipulators, and they're trying to change me from my identity, and whatever I want to be in life, whatever I want to do, I should be able to do it. And here's somebody coming along trying to control me or change me. And that's what got me kind of thinking about, well, what is manipulation really? And is that what's going on in churches and things like that? And it kind of made me start to dig into this thing a little deeper, because I hear this word and gaslighting and all that stuff coming up a whole lot. And so it's made me kind of dig into it and what does the Bible actually say about it? And so I want to kind of talk about that, talk about some biblical examples of this and what it is and what it isn't today. And we may go into this, maybe the breakdown of it is, what is the manner of manipulation? How do people manipulate? And then what's their motive behind it? And that's really the idea. Manipulators are trying to get something from you and trying to change you and control you for their own benefit. And that's what a manipulator is doing. That's why I would say it's different than what you see in church, because what a church and a pastor is doing is trying to motivate you, not manipulate you. And it's for your good, right, not for their benefit. Now, there are, obviously, 2 Peter 2 talked about there are covetous false apostles that will use feigned words to make merchandise of you. And I'm aware that there are churches out there that are trying to make merchandise of you, but Bible-believing, true, honest churches that are speaking the truth in love, they're not doing anything to try to get anything from you. They're trying to help you be better. And so I would call those people motivators, not manipulators, because again, manipulation is about trying to get something from you. And so let's look at that a little bit today and try to understand a little bit more about what manipulation is. And so let's define it first. To manipulate something means to handle or control it. It'd be like a sculptor, or it'd be like a painter manipulating the canvas and the paints, or somebody manipulating the clay. But it also has to do with a person or a situation. Someone can manipulate or control the situation. And in both cases, a manipulator, the person that's doing it, is skillful. And sometimes a person has become very skillful at manipulating people and situations. And most of the time they're doing it with their words and the things that they will say. And again, I said this last night, but the master manipulator was Satan. Right. And it says he speaketh a lie. He speaketh of his own, because he's a father of the lies. And so he speaks lies and he manipulates and he twists things. Remember in the garden, he did that with Eve. He twisted the situation for his own benefit there in that. I wanted to look at today, just try to get this idea, looking at Proverbs chapter 7, and we're going to look at a word that the Bible uses that's kind of like a manipulator, and that is the word flatterer. And to flatter means to please, to gratify, kind of to flatter one's vanity or pride, to stroke the situation of the person, to make the person feel good so you can win them over to your way of thinking, which is manipulation. And the Bible uses that phrase in the word flatter. And we'll look at where it's mentioned. One of the places is Proverbs chapter number 7. And let's read through this a little bit and see if you can get the idea. Proverbs 7 and verse number 5, it says, that they may keep thee, talking about the truths, the commands, the word, would keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and beheld among the simple ones, I discerned among the youths a young man void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner. And he went the way of her house in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of a harlot and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impudent face, which means immoral or immodest face, said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face. It's almost like you're so important. I came to meet you. I came to seek your face, and I have found thee. Now, this is a side note here. She was out there willing to catch anybody that came by. Wow. But what she's saying to him with her words is, you're so important. You're the one I've been looking for all this time. She's trying to flatter him with her words. You're so important to me with the things that she's saying. In verse 16, I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love into the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not at home. He is gone a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed. And with her much fair speech, she's speaking fair things, she calls him to yield. With the flattering of her lips she forced him. He goeth after her straightway as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteneth to the snare, and knoweth not that it's for his life. And so you see here someone that's using their speech, their words, kind of stroking this person. I've been looking for you. I mean, you're so great. I've been out here looking for you this whole time. They're trying to make that person feel good, but they're not. It's not about that person. You understand that it's not about that person. This woman is using her words to try to lure that person in for her own benefit, for her own pleasure. And so people do that. They use their words. I'll read you a couple of verses in Psalm 5:9. It says, for there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wickedness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. So this is a person that's using flattery. They're not faithful to you. They're using you to try to get something for themselves. That's what this flatter. Now, let me time out and say this. Not everybody that walks up to you says, you know, you look nice today. You don't have to immediately say, oh, flatterer, you're out to get something from me. They may not just be saying something nice. But I am saying that manipulators will use this tactic, right, their words and their speech, to try to get something from you. That's what they do. That's who they are. And let me say this. A lot of them, when you look at this, what is their motive? I'm stepping outside the text here to say this. We've talked about this amongst us here, and Dylan and Micaiah, we talked about this yesterday and talked a little bit about this today. The idea is, when you look at her, I don't know what caused this woman to fall in the trap of being a manipulator, but I can tell you this, that most people have got this in them at somewhere along the way. Children are born this way. They cry to get you to come into a room. You think they're crying because they're hurt. They really just want something from you. It's built into us. We've learned to navigate through life by not just asking somebody for something because we think, well, they won't give it to me. I have to find a niche. I got to find a way to get people to give me what I want, because just asking, they might not give it to me. Right. Or just asking, I may have to wait. Or just asking, they may say no because it's inconvenient. So I got to find a way to get them to give me what I want. And people do that sometimes. I said this last night. My daughter does that. She'll blink her eyes and say please and I love you, Daddy. And she's saying it. I genuinely think she loves me, but I think she's so young that what she's learned is, if I'll say that, maybe Daddy will give me something. Especially when we go to a store or something, she immediately wants to go to the toy section. And it's like, I love you, Daddy. And I realize she's not saying I love you because at that point she just has an overwhelming feeling of love for me and just happens to be in the toy section when she feels that emotion. She's really trying to tune me up for a Barbie doll. You know, she's wanting something out of that section. And everybody's got this in them, and they're looking for something. And for the most part, we've said this a little bit as we've talked about it, I think for the most part, some people, the reason why they get this way is they're insecure. They don't trust that God's going to give them something. They don't trust that the people around them can meet their needs or whatever they need. So they're a little bit of an insecure. I have to find a crutch to get my way. I've got to find a way to hold on to either my position or my pleasures. I've got to find a way to get it because I can't get it just the normal way. I've got to find a way to get it. I'm insecure. And when you look at this woman, I said this the other day, I thought this was interesting. Her husband's gone. Let's just say that, I'm not trying to add anything into this too much. Maybe he was just doing his job and she's just wicked. Or maybe he's often gone on long journeys and takes the money and leaves for a long journey and is gone. And this woman feels lonely. And she feels like, I don't have anybody in my life that spends time with me. And maybe she now has resorted to promiscuity because that's the only way she's going to get attention. She's insecure. And there's no one there and a husband to say, hey, you look nice today, honey, and whatever. And so she's trying to find it somewhere else. I'm not saying she's got a good excuse. I'm just saying that people find excuses to become manipulators. And maybe she's found an excuse. Her excuse is, I'm insecure about how I look, and if people actually think I'm worth anything, so I'll go out and find somebody to make me feel like I'm something. And I'll go find somebody and I'll manipulate with my words because I'm insecure. And I'm trying to find a way to get something. Again, guys, you can add anything you want to say at any point with this. You're welcome to do that.
I'll say this. The book of Proverbs has a lot of very interesting statements made in there for us to learn from. And in Proverbs 26, it deals with this exact same topic. You have in verse 24, he that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. When he, the guy that hateth, speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart, whose hatred is covered by deceit. His wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will roll upon him, return upon him. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. And it's the thing with manipulation, and he said it very well. Some of these things you pick up on going through life. You realize it's easier to do that than to just endure. Or I can, if I say things a certain way, it's just made my life it's made this situation easier. But the reality is, it's working ruin in someone's life, whether it's yours or someone else's. And there's a really fine line. It's interesting. I think about this a lot. There's a very fine line with exhorting, encouraging, versus flattering somebody. And that's I don't want to get off into a long tangent, but we'll talk about it more. It comes down to purpose and motivation, why you're trying to do it. But you could say the exact same things and have a different heart in it. And that's where this person, he speaks fair, believe him not, for there's 7 abominations in his heart. And another place in Proverbs, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So it's one of those, it's a really interesting topic.
That takes you back. That's exactly the point we're talking about with a flatterer, is they have a motivation behind what they're doing.
Right.
And he has abominations in his heart. He's flattering with his lips, he's flattering you, but it's not because he's trying to actually lift you up, which is what a person that's exhorting would do. They're trying to lift you up and make you better. This person is trying to lift you up to make themselves better,
right?
To get something from you. Because if I flatter you and I say great things about you, then you'll trust me and you'll give me what I'm looking for. You'll let down your guard, you'll let me in, and you'll do that. And again, I think there's a level of insecurity in people that do that because they can't, just like you said, go about it the normal way of getting ahead in life. Hard work gets me ahead in life. Doing the right thing gets me ahead in life. I've got to find a shortcut around the hard work. I've got to get something from somebody by leaping ahead of other people, by making them trust me so that I can get ahead of them.
Right.
And that's a manipulator.
And the sad truth is, a lot of people know that, especially in Christian circles. Christians are supposed to be kind and compassionate. They're supposed to be nice to me. So you'll find a lot of manipulation in churches because, well, they'll tell me what I want to hear. We were talking about it before we got up here. That person that comes in, there's always something wrong, right? Like we talked about the Andy Griffith show yesterday. What's her name?
I don't remember.
The lady that, I don't know her name either. I don't much for secular television, but
Sure,
but like the guy that comes
She
in.
needs her pills. She needs her. Yeah.
The guy that's there's always something. Like he comes in with a very dramatic limp, and he's expecting you to be like, "Oh man, what's wrong?" And then, "Oh, this whole thing. No, I just got hit by a train. It's not a big deal, but oh, I'm so sorry." And it's just
the people that are fishing for some kind of. They're looking for you to prop them up a little bit, so they're fishing for some kind of, trying to get you to compliment them because they're insecure in who they are and what they are. Now, there's something that is interesting. I in Proverbs chapter 29 and verse number 5, there's always, which is, we're getting to that kind of here, is the motivation. In Proverbs 29:5, a man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. So he's flattering him so that he can, and in that flattery, he's laying out a net to try to trap that man and pull him in because he wants something from him.
Right.
That's the idea behind what flattery is about. And so you're wanting, your manipulation is you're wanting to get something from a person. Now, I mentioned this yesterday, and we might not go through all these like we were before, but people have motives for why they're doing it.
Sure.
The man that comes in that is always has an ailment, like you just said, to try to get people to say, "Oh, it's so-and-so again. Oh man, I feel bad for you," and to rub their back, to pat them, to hug on them, to love on them. They're looking for love because maybe they don't get it at home. Maybe they don't get it in life. Maybe they don't feel very loved. And people don't normally love on them when they just walk into a room normal. So they have to have some kind of crutch, some kind of thing to get people to show them what they desperately want. They want love. And so there's some examples of that in the Bible. And so we're going to kind of hit on some of those. One of them is, and I'll just I won't read through the verses, but I'll just give you the addresses to the verses. But in 1 Samuel 22, 6 through 8, King Saul is obviously having his motivation is pride. Has a pride problem. David is outshining him. David's looking better. He's thinking he's going to take his kingdom. David's obviously the one that's doing much better than he is. And I've always said that I thought King Saul was a super insecure person.
Sure.
He's an insecure leader. And so what he does, he tells the people when he's talking to his servants, he says, "Don't any of you feel sorry for me? My own son is not with me. He's following after David. And so he's trying to make them feel guilt. And something somebody will do is try to make you feel guilt or sorry or pity for me. And that's what falls into that person there. Hey, you're getting around pretty good, but look at me. I barely get around and things are bad in my life. And it's a person that's always got a woe. Now, there are some people that just really have some bad things in their life. I'm not trying to belittle that.
Right.
But I am saying there's some people that they've always got a bad thing going on. And the reason why is because they're hoping someone will love on them because they're really needing that. They feel like they really need that. And so they'll try to use guilt to make you feel a certain way for them. Look what all I've done for you. And so you should do this thing for me. And it's really a type of manipulation.
I've said this a million times. Whether it's woe is me or woe it's me, it's pride.
Yeah.
Because self-pity is just as much pride as running around beating your chest.
Yeah.
It's pride. It's about self.
Well, and insecurity can show through in two ways. You're putting people down or you're trying to get yourself put up. And like Pastor Eric Knight, and I don't know why I just said his whole name, but anyway, that was so weird. Like Pastor said last night, name calling and just being very overly critical of people is an insecurity, and you're always putting people down, and also, trying to get attention. I'm just looking at this through my lens. In the past, whenever I was insecure about preaching and things like that, I would always, when someone asked me to preach, either before preaching or after preaching, I'd be like, well, other people are better than me. Or after I get done preaching, man, that was the worst message ever. Just to fish for compliments to try to put myself up. And a lot of people would do like that and be like that. Yep. And insecure people are like that. They're very manipulative and they're very controlling. And I say that in the sense of, I gave this illustration yesterday. You'll have someone who, in the past relationship, someone cheated on the other person. And so now when you're in new relationships, if a guy even gets close to her, now you're controlling situation, and you're not wanting that person to even be close to that other person, and you're controlling things and being manipulative because you don't want something to happen again.
Yeah.
So you're insecure, and so you have to control everything. You have to be controlling and manipulative when you find yourself insecure.
Listen, I'm glad we did it, but not just me talking, but y'all talking, because that brings up a fantastic point in this. And again, that's what I'm saying, the motivation. When I said the woman in Proverbs 7, if you really think through the story, what if there's a story behind why they become a manipulator?
Yeah.
Not saying it's a good reason, but I'm just saying there is a reason. With yours, I've seen that over and over again, people that have been burned in relationships or hurt. Now they feel like I have to find ways to manipulate this to make sure I never get hurt again. It's a self-preservation.
Right.
Sure.
And so they found a way to be. And so let me say this, because this is a great point to make. Not everybody that's a manipulator is a wicked person.
Right.
It could just be a damaged person that has learned that this is the way I have to navigate through life.
Right.
I used this the other day. There was a lady that was in our church that was a sweet lady. Loved her very much. The church supported her and helped her. And she was a widow in our church. And she would call people and make up things just to get them to come over because she was lonely. And she would make up stuff like, I need you to get here right away, something's happened. And people would jump up and take off over there. When you get there, they find that she really wasn't in that dire straits, but it was really because she just wanted people there, because she realized if I just asked people, could you come over and visit, they wouldn't. So she had to make it, because it was something that they've learned a tool to make things work because they're lonely or they've been hurt before or whatever it is. And people do it. And to some degree, like you said, the other one is using threats or bullying. This is one I will read in 1 Samuel 20 and verse number 30. Again, Saul is dealing with the fact that his own pride and David is taking over. Saul says this about Jonathan, who is kind of siding with David, his own son. He's going to try to manipulate. Watch what he does. In 1 Samuel 20 and verse 30, then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, Thou son of the perverse and rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion and the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? He's insulting. He's not really trying to insult Jonathan's mom. He's trying to insult Jonathan.
Right.
And that's what he's doing. He's trying to bully him. It's like the bully on the playground that says something about your mama. He really doesn't even know your mother. He doesn't even care about your mother. He's trying to insult you, and he's being a bully. He's trying to bring something up so that he can intimidate you to make himself bigger, or to make the rest of the kids on the playground think that he's better than you. He's doing something to try to intimidate and manipulate the situation. And people will do that. It's another tactic, whether it's guilt or pride or whatever it is. They will, or they'll use guilt. They'll sometimes use fear and threats by bullying, belittling, intimidating, humiliating, name calling, things like that. So you will see some of those things in there. There's different people they're trying to get praise, trying to get power. They're trying to lift themselves up. There's a lot of different
What about
illustrations
that bear
there.
illustration that you used last night? Unless you don't want to go into
No, that's so when we were in we went to walk in Yellowstone, me and Stacy, and we were going to go for a hike, and we love doing that stuff. And I had not really thought anything about bears. As we were driving on the road, we were like, "Oh, look, a bear." And I guess it never occurred to me that if I go walking in their environment, I might see one there too, and I won't have the benefit of an accelerator that I can move away very quickly, or the cabin of a truck. So we were going to go for a hike, and they said you got to take bear spray, and I'm thinking bear spray. What do I need bear spray for? And they said, huh?
I said, chump.
Yeah.
Who used bear spray?
Who used bear spray? So I thought, okay, I take bear spray. So I took it, and I said this last night, that I've always just heard if a bear comes to attack and you got more than one of you, you don't have to outrun the bear, you just got to outrun the other person.
Amen.
But then when it came to the fact that the other person was my wife, I thought I'm going to have to probably stand there and take it. And so I thought bear spray might be a blessing after all. And so we took it. But they said this, they said, don't run away from a bear, boast yourself up to try to make yourself look bigger so the bear will be intimidated and walk off. Now, obviously, there's nothing about me that's intimidating to that bear, but the idea is you make yourself bigger so that the bear, and that's what people do. People will try to manipulate the situation by, if I can't just talk you through a situation to get through it, and I feel like I'm insecure. Insecure people do this in arguments. When you get in an argument with an insecure person and they can't just talk to you through it, they will manipulate it by then making themselves bigger by insulting you or calling you names to try to manipulate the argument. And that's what people do. When they don't have a good leg to stand on, they'll try to manipulate it through being they're boasting or whatever they're doing. So these are all manipulations, and there's tons of other ones. Flattery, that people do it. There's tons more that they do it. I mentioned this yesterday, and I think it's worth kind of mentioning in Proverbs chapter 20, talking about this insecurity thing in verse number 19. Then we'll get on to this last point. It says, "He that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets, therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips." It's interesting that a lot of people that become flatterers are also gossips. They're loose with their mouth. And I've always found this to be the truth. People that gossip a lot are insecure people.
Yeah.
And the reason why they gossip is because they have when they get to gossip, they get to be the center of the conversation. They know something that you don't know, and you want to come to them for stuff. And so it makes them feel important. And flatterers want to be made to feel important. Gossips want to be made to feel important. And so it's all about an insecurity.
Sure.
To me, it all reverts back to an insecurity. And so with this last point, I just want to say, because I said at the beginning, some people think that anybody that flatters or exhorts, or anybody that tries to, kind of control the situation or lead, that they're manipulators. And I think there is a big difference between someone that's manipulating. Again, the motivation behind a manipulator, true manipulation, is for me to get something from you. But when you talk about somebody that's actually trying to exhort, see, I think there's a difference between flattering for personal gain or exhorting for your gain.
Right.
And there's a difference between manipulating for my gain versus persuading or provoking you for your gain.
Right.
And I think that when people say that churches are manipulators or that pastors are manipulating, I think that they misunderstand what manipulation is, because it's not about trying to get something from me. It's about trying to get something for you.
Sure.
And try to help you with something. And I think that's a difference.
Preaching, is to reprove, rebuke, and exhort. 2/3 of those are negative.
Yeah.
or somewhat negative.
Yeah.
And the reality is, Jesus, when he's dealing in Revelation with the churches, he affirms them before he confronts them.
Yeah.
He says, I know your love, your labor, and all of that, but I still have somewhat against you.
Yeah.
You can be tactful. It's not manipulating if you're motivating somebody to better themselves, like you're saying.
It's not for my benefit, it's for your benefit.
Right. And the reality is, we've learned this from Pastor Derek Knight, right? Full name again. You do the sandwich method. It's the proper way to do it. You say something nice, then you rip their face off, and then you say something nice again. That's that's motivation. It's power,
I'm trying to give you something that's helping you in a way that is tactful. That's not necessarily manipulation. I'm actually trying to motivate you.
Certainly.
I'm trying to help you with something. Do you have a comment from the peanut gallery?
Yeah, I'm thinking the end is destruction. There's damage that's done.
Okay, so that's a great point. So that kind of came off camera and off microphone, but the idea was that sometimes with manipulation, the end result is destruction or damage.
Right.
When it's motivation and when someone's trying to help you, the end result is they're taking you towards something that betters you.
Sure.
And when I've seen this before, and people have said this before, like, hey, I want to live, let's say I want to live an alternate lifestyle. I want to live in adultery. I want to live in homosexuality. I want to live in something that's negative, that's bad, it's unbiblical. And maybe they're around church, and a pastor or a good friend or somebody comes to them to try to show them truth. Mm-hmm. Now, they might come to them with the sandwich technique. They're not trying to manipulate them. They're trying to soften the blow. When Nathan said to David, when he was going to say, "Thou art the man," he started off with talking about the sheep, and He was trying to manipulate him. He was trying to soften the blow that he was about to
Right.
give him because he loved him enough to tell him a hard truth. You know what we're supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be speaking the truth in what?
Love.
Love. So sometimes love may soften the blow of how you do it. We're not trying to manipulate. We're trying to motivate you
Right.
and give you truth. And not always is that truth going to feel good. You might not always like the truth, but it's supposed to be there. Like you said, reprove, rebuke, exhort. Exhort means to cheer on, which is similar to what a flatterer does. They cheer you on. But what a flatterer is doing is cheering you on for their gain. And what an exhorter is doing is trying to cheer you on for your betterment. And so that's the difference. That the manipulator is trying to do it for me, where a motivator or a person that's trying to provoke you or persuade you is doing it for you. Hebrews 10 talks about, in verse 24, let us consider one another to provoke unto love and good works. We're there to provoke each other to love and good works. Ephesians 4 talks about speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. So we're trying to provoke people, help people. So verse 14 of that same place, they're not tossed about with negative and bad things and wrong doctrine. We're trying to help them be more sound. We're trying to give them truth. We're trying to help them. And let me say this, just like a manipulator, sometimes a manipulator might use fear and guilt and flattering words to try to get you to do something for them. That's the negative. You may think about this now, you may run into a preacher that may give you the word of God, and at the end of it, you may feel a measure of guilt, right? You said a while ago, there's a difference between condemnation and conviction. You may feel after a preacher shows you the word of God in love, the truth in love, you may feel a measure of guiltiness. Yeah, you know what? I am guilty of that. But that preacher is not doing that so that you can be indebted towards him.
Right.
He's trying to show you that so you can change that about your life and have a better life for you. So it's not about manipulation, it's motivation.
Sure.
So you may feel a measure of guilt. You may fear some fear. Fear is the beginning of wisdom. So somebody might preach you something and say, you need to fear God. They're not trying to do that to manipulate something out of you.
Right.
They're trying to motivate something in you that'll actually help you. And so that's the difference. That's the difference. And so really what it comes down to is manipulation is to try to get something out of you, where motivation is to do something in you. And I think people get that confused sometimes in our circles today. So again, a lot of it has to do with insecurity. There's different motivations why people become manipulators. And I would say this, if you are a person that says today, you know what, I think I've found out that I'm a manipulator in certain ways. Well, then join the club. I can do the same thing. I thought about this after I finished the sermon last night. I finished the sermon. I finished the whole, last words of my mouth before we ended yesterday was, I'll preach a better sermon to you on Sunday. Because I felt like, man, when I was speaking it, nobody said amen. Nobody smiled. Everybody looked at me like, either the whole room was full of manipulators and they all felt guilty, or they were all dead asleep or whatever, or I just missed the mark. But it just felt so odd. When I got through, watch this now, I was almost felt like I was fishing for a compliment.
How about that?
Here I preached a message about people that fish for compliments by being a manipulator, and I finished the whole thing out by saying, I'll do something better for you next week, almost as if I was waiting for somebody to walk up and say, well, this one was pretty good though. You're right. And so by the end of the sermon, I felt like I needed to go to the altar myself.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying to you is we all have this tendency.
Sure.
And we've got to just recognize this tendency. I mean, the guy that got up and said, don't manipulate, did it at the end of the sermon. So I'm saying to you, we all have this tendency, and we need to recognize that we're taking shortcuts because of our own insecurities, and we need to recognize it and fix it. And then the second thing I want you to get is when somebody comes to you and tries to correct you, don't put them in the box of a manipulator if they're trying to actually do something for your good.
Right. Amen.
And that's what our takeaways for. Hopefully this will be a blessing to you. Hopefully it'll be a help. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know. We're working through lists of questions. Some of you have asked harder questions than others. And because you've asked harder questions, it's taken more study. And so we're getting to your question.
Yeah.
Rest assured we'll get there, but it's taken more study to get there, and we'll eventually get to that day. So don't give up on us. We'll get there eventually. We hope this has been a blessing to you. We love you. Write us if you have any more questions. God bless you.